Welcome into Teal The Show. We've got Frank Frangie in the building. Frank, we have got a lot of ground to cover and a lot of questions around this team. This is going to be an interesting show.
Well, I tell you, it is. One of the strangest games I've ever seen. And listen, there's no sugarcoating this one, Jamal. It was as bad a performance as we've seen from this team ever. Certainly as bad in a long, long time. There's no explaining it. I know they feel that way. I know Doug feels that way. I know the players do. But it was a tough day for the Jaguars. No getting around it, man.
Worst loss in franchise history, Frank. It's tough to sugarcoat that. Worst loss in franchise history. The only thing that stopped the Lions' offense on Sunday was the clock. There's not a whole lot of positives you can take from it. And normally you say you flush it and you move on to the next game, but it's the bye week. So now fans, players, and the team kind of have to sit in it for a whole nother week.
Well, the strange thing about, at least for me, Jamal, is this isn't, they've played every game close. Yeah, the Bills game wasn't close way early in the season, and the Bears got away from them a little bit. But for the most part, they've played everybody close. They've been in every game. They've been I mean, it's come down to the last minute and a half. Who makes one more play? No matter who they're playing, that's been the game, and not this game. This one it was hard to figure. It was hard to understand why it went the way it did. I mean, from the get-go, they didn't look like they were ready to play. It looked like they were in a bit of a zone. And again, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of noise out there, Jamal. And it's hard to think that stuff, even like the Ian Rappaport report that came out early, didn't somehow, some way affect all this. It was so uncharacteristic of just about any game they've played. And frankly, again, I've never seen anything like it. The Lions scored on 7 straight possessions, touchdowns, not field goals. I mean, they had 645 yards in that game. It was one of the most bizarre games I've ever seen. It really was.
We'll talk about some of that noise here coming up a little bit later on, but let's stick with the Lions game for just a little while longer. So after that loss, Frank, now they go into the bye week. And the one thing that it seems like the guys that we talked to in the locker room could agree on is that the bye week is coming at the perfect time.
I think you ask everyone around this building, this bye week has come at the perfect time. Not only just time away from the building, but self-reflection, getting your bodies back. But I think the biggest thing is a mental and physical reset. And then we get to come out of this with 6 weeks of being able to just push and see what we can do. See, we put our foot in the gas. We have nothing to lose. Be professionals and do that to the best of our ability.
Where we are and still 6 games to go, I think it's time to just hit the reset button and just sort of rewind, kind of get like I said, get fresh again, coaches and players. And the coaches need to, and this is what I challenge them to this week. This week we got to go back and we got to look at everything, right, from a schematic standpoint, player standpoint, personnel standpoint, all that kind of stuff this week. And if we come out of this bye and we just kind of keep doing the same things and trying to expect different results, it's probably not going to happen.
Look, that's not the normal answer, Frank. Normally after a tough loss like that, you hear a team saying, look, we're excited to get back out on the field because that's a way that you can kind of show and flush that last one that's not the team you are. But to me, it's at least a little strange to hear guys saying, look, we needed this bye week. We need a break from it to recover. That's a little odd.
It's funny. Doug talked about it too. If you say, yeah, we're tired, we need a bye week, that means it looks like you're making excuses. And no one's trying to make excuses. They're trying to be honest. The team probably did need it. But I'll say it again. Something was odd about that game, Jamal. Something weird the way the game played out. No adjustments. I'll give an offense a little bit of a pass. You didn't have your quarterback. You're down Christian Kirk. You're down Tank Bigsby. Your left tackle you started the season with isn't on the team anymore. You lose Gabe Davis early in the game. I'm not making excuses, but anytime you're playing with your backup quarterback on the road against a good team, you can't expect it to be perfect. I understand that. The defense was so puzzling. A week earlier, against a pretty good Vikings team, they had 3 takeaways and held them to a very small amount of points. This game comes along, and they can't get out of their own way. It was bizarre. I think the sideline was flat. I think it was one of the strangest games you'll ever see. The amount of yards Detroit gained the amount of the difference in yardage between Detroit and Jacksonville. Jamal was the third largest in league history and the largest since 1979. It just doesn't jive. It's weird that it was that odd for this team. It was so uncharacteristic. Look, they just lost again. They were 2-8, now they're 2-9. So it's not the end result, but it's so odd that the game was so uncharacteristic of the way their season has gone to this point.
2-9, and now there are a lot of questions about Doug Peterson's job security. We'll talk about some of those questions right after this quick break until the show comes back. All right, welcome back here into Teal The Show. All right, Frank, the question that fans want to know right now is Doug Peterson going to be the head coach of this team when the bye week is over, when they get back out on the field for the next game? As of right now, as we do this show, Doug Peterson is still the Jaguars head coach. Frank, Shad Khan has historically been a very patient owner and hasn't really made very many rash moves in the middle of a season. Would you let Doug Peterson finish out the year even if you had already made the decision to move on?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables there, Jamal. Number one, I don't sense that he has moved on. I don't know where Shad is on this. Shad, to his credit, is not a guy that goes and pops off a lot like some owners, and I like that about him. He keeps it close to the vest. He doesn't need everybody talking about what do they think he's thinking. So it's a bizarre situation. I don't know what you gain by pulling the plug and handing it over to an interim coach. A lot of times when you give an interim coach a job, it's because you're trying him out. I think one of the reasons Gus Bradley was fired, they wanted to try out Doug Marrone and see if he would work as a head coach, and then they wound up keeping him. I don't know that there's anybody on this staff that one day is going to be the head coach, a full-time head coach of the Jaguars. So I don't know that you gain that. So the question is, will the team respond better to different leadership? If not, then there's no point in making a change now. Now, that's a different question than making a change at the end of the season. But will your team respond better? I know fans always want people fired. It's not just Jaguar fans. When teams are losing, fans want the coach and GM fired, and I get that. And maybe that'll happen by the end of the year, but I don't know what you gain. Having said that, I don't know what's going to happen. They haven't spoken yet. Doug did his normal press conference today. It was business as usual, it seemed like. It was an awkward press conference because he's got to answer all those questions that everybody has. But I don't know. My gut tells me if he was out there today at the presser, he's probably not going anywhere at least this week. So we'll see we'll have to see what happens.
The questions are definitely going to keep coming because now the reports are out there that there's uncertainty around the Jaguars and if change is coming / when change is coming, what sort of changes are coming. Doug Peterson did talk about possible changes to his coaching staff and saying that, he was considering these things moving forward. I'm not sure what sort of change on the coaching staff would move me or is even a possibility. Frank, does anything come to mind for you that he could do during the bye week to his staff that would say, oh, well, there's something to give you hope down the stretch?
The reality of that, Jamal, is we don't know the inner workings of the staff. Fans want someone fired because they feel like once someone's fired, the next guy will do better. It'll get better. I don't know the staff well enough to know. If you moved on from Ryan Nielsen, is there an assistant that would do a better job calling defensive plays than Ryan? I don't know the staff well enough to know that. I think the biggest question for Shad isn't even these last 6 games. Look, they're 2-9. They shouldn't cash in the season. I appreciate the fact that Doug and the players are not going to. But the bigger question as you move forward is how to fix it. And maybe one of the reasons that Shad hasn't done anything yet is he's not figured out yet how you fix it. How do you fix it moving forward? Do you have an executive vice president, one person who's in charge of all things football, and let that person go hire the general manager and the coach? Do you do it that way? Does that person come in and maybe keep the coach and not the GM or vice versa? I think he has to decide what's the best way to move this franchise forward. It has been a struggling franchise since Shad bought it, and he knows that. He's a mega successful business person, but it has not gone as well as he would have liked it to go. So I think this time before he makes any decisions, rather than just end this reign, what's the next move? And my guess is Shad right now is trying to figure out what's the next move for the team, not just what do you do for the here and now. I really believe that.
What do you think would be the best move moving forward for the team, Frank?
I would bring in an executive vice president. I would bring in, now look, and I'm biased in this because Tony Vaselli is my friend, but that's what I would do. I think that's what's happening around the league. John Lynch is a former player that has done a fantastic job with the 49ers. There's talk in New York that the Jets are going to bring in Curtis Martin, who was a fantastic Jets player, one of the best running backs in team history, and that he will be in charge of all things football, and that he will hire a coach and a GM. In baseball, the San Francisco Giants just hired Buster Posey, who was a fantastic player and should be in the Hall of Fame one day, as the director of all things baseball. He's the EVP of the Giants, and then he will go hire the general manager and then the field manager. I would like to see that. I think Tony's the guy that lives here. I think he's connected. I think he's one of the smartest people I know. He's extremely successful running a private business that he started, so he certainly has the business acumen. He knows football. I think the messaging would be very easy. Tell the world that Tony Baselli is running the show, and I think people would love that. I would put him in charge, and then I would have Tony in charge of the rest. I think Doug Peterson's a good coach. I know not everybody thinks that, and maybe the EVP or whoever's in charge wouldn't think that. I think Doug Peterson didn't forget how to coach. That Super Bowl ring is real. It happened. Those 2 winning seasons here happened. So I think there's something there, but that would be for the EVP to decide. And I would put a guy like Tony Baselli in charge of all of it, and all the football people report to him. If I was in charge, that's what I would do.
Strange enough, we've talked about Tony Baselli for that EVP spot a few times, and the first time we talked about it, we hadn't compared notes, and it just was kind of something that I had talked about here at Channel 4 and something that you had talked about, and then there it was. Frank, I would think that would be a fantastic move, and definitely would be something that Shad Khan should consider. We'll see what ultimately happens. Still a lot of time left in the season, still a lot of time for Shad Khan to make those decisions, and some tough decisions ahead. The Jaguars have the bye week, so nothing to report game-wise on Friday, so we'll talk a little bit more about moving forward with the team and what's next, and if Doug Peterson is still the head coach at that time. We'll see what happens over the next week. Things will definitely be interesting. There's never a dull moment here in Jacksonville. Frank, thanks for being here tonight. Thank you at home for tuning in. Good night, everybody, and go Jags.